The following podcast is a presentation of Project Entertainment Network.
Welcome to Vicious Whispers with Mark Tullius, your source for horror, sci-fi, suspense, and all things violent.
Hey guys, thank you so much for joining us today on Vicious Whispers with Mark Tullius. Today, our special guest is Lucas Hohmann from Germany. Lucas, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, what's up? I'm really happy to be here.
Dude, this is awesome. Well, first, let me explain how we met. You are the host of the Creativ Cast. I found you, I forget what the platform is, the Audrey. Yeah, but it's awesome. So I was looking for individuals that I could go on their podcast, learn from them, share with them, but especially someone that's from Germany, because I'm trying to break into the market. I want to get a better feel for people from Germany, because I think a lot of people in the U.S. have a feeling that, Germans are just all strict and no fun. But that hasn't been my experience so far. So tell me a little bit about yourself, a little bit about the podcast and what else you do. I'd love to hear just about who you are.
Yeah, I would love to share that with you. Well, basically, I come from Spain, so I'm more Spanish than anything else. But I do have some German roots through my parents. My father's from Berlin, and stuff like that. So I grew up bilingual, actually, like Spanish, German. So that kind of gave me the possibility or easy access to actually at some point move to Germany and work here, and without having to go through the struggle of learning the language, which helps.
Now, how long have you been in Germany? How long have you been living there?
Right now, literally not that long. I haven't reached the year yet.
Okay.
So about it, almost a year now. The thing is, I've grew up in Spain, and I've studied there. I've studied photography, so I'm more a photographer than anything else. And after I finished my degree, I just applied for a bunch of jobs around the world, and Germany just happened to be the place that wanted me the most. And I found as a printing expert in a sense here in Germany. So I'm working in the art print industry, like
Okay.
fine art print. So I print for larger artists that produce their art with us and sell it to the customers.
That's nice. Now, how has the transition been? It's this. You probably picked a very strange time to make a big move like that. But how's the transition been? How do you like Germany compared to Spain?
Man, I love Spain, man, and the weather there is amazing, and there's just nothing to compare that to here in Germany, and I do miss that a lot. But I was forced, not gonna lie to you, to move to a more industrialized country like Germany, because there is so much more of a market for young people like me that have studied degrees that are more artsy. Then in Spain is really, really hard. Normally you have to go for maybe a paid master degree or something. That's quite expensive in order to actually get get a job somewhere.
Oh, okay.
And here in Germany, it's much easier if you happen to have the ability to speak the language. So I felt I knew I had to leave the country, go abroad, whether it's some English-speaking country or Germany, because there's just a lot of more demand there for people like me. That's the main reason. But yeah, the timing was a bit off, I'm not gonna lie, because it was in the middle of the pandemic. It was last summer, and I am still surprised that I managed to do that, because all the odds stood against me, and it wasn't. Like I was very lucky to actually find something.
That's awesome. I'm glad it's working out. Now, when did you start the podcast? Was that after the transition? So, how long have you been doing the podcast, and why have you been doing the podcast?
Yeah, so I've done my. It has been a long process until I actually managed to start it. Like I started this year in, I think by the end of February I started, so it's quite young,
Hmm.
and I've been doing it for a few months now. Mm, but I feel like the process, um, from having the idea or the wish to start one to actually making the step and producing your first episode. It took me about 2 years actually to do that, just that before I actually started. Like it took me a long time to get in the right mindset.
Hmm.
Um, it wasn't necessarily that much of a work problem, but of a do I really want to do this and overcoming insecurities problem.
Right.
So that took me a better part of a year to figure that out for myself, how I want to do it, and if and really like if I want to do like do I have the space for it, and how serious I want to approach it. Like, is this like just a thing I do for a month and then I realize, oh no, I don't like it and I stop again, or do I want to make it, a years and years project, a long term one. So once I was completely sure that I wanted to do it, because, well, I couldn't think of anything else really. Like I was like,
Hmm.
podcast. I was listening to all these different podcasts, like the Joe Rogan Experience, which is, the most famous one. And it just got me more excited, and it just, mm, showed me how I really want to do the same thing and get into, that world, right? So that was step one, pretty much overcoming my own insecurities. And then step two, which was, I would say probably another year, is figuring out all the details and the plan, like where I'm gonna do it. Do I have the space in my apartment to do it, or do I want to do it outside? Maybe I want to rent some place, or do I have the equipment? I have to buy the equipment. Which equipment is best? Do I
Hmm.
have the budget? And balancing all of that out. And then once I had all of that, it was pretty much fine tuning and getting ready. Uh,
Hmm.
I really did that once I moved here. I looked for a flat that would allow me and give me the space to do it. And actually, sometimes I have people invited over that in person. Sometimes I have it via Zoom. But if they actually come personally, I want them to feel comfortable. Having a second chair and
Hmm.
the drinks, and have the space and have it nice. And I also have to think about the lighting and how it's going to look. Is it going to be in video, only audio? So there are a ton of questions you have to ask yourself,
Hmm.
um, to do this, if you want to make it as serious as you can. And there's a big learning curve as well, as I had to teach everything myself, which is pretty easy nowadays. Just Googling pretty much anything,
Hmm.
which I'm very grateful for. I don't have to buy a book, or I don't have to buy a course or know someone that knows everything already. So I just watched a ton of videos and read some blogs, and I had to teach myself, how does podcast even work? Where does it stream? Where does it live? How do I distribute it to all these different platforms like Spotify and iTunes and whatnot? And that's the podcast side of it. But on the other side, you have to also, if you do video, you have to um, edit that video. So you need to a
Hmm.
video software program. You need like something like Premiere Pro. I'd use Adobe. You need Photoshop for the thumbnails. You need an audio program like Audition for treating the audio. So all of that was like quite new to me. Like I knew Photoshop because I studied photography, so I was quite familiar with that. But everything else was quite the hill to overcome. But I don't know. I've fun learning all that, so it wasn't too hard, and I really enjoy the moment after I surpass that. Once I know everything, it's like a lot of fun because you just have to repeat it and you get better and better. So I really
Right.
enjoyed that part as well.
Now, do you have perfectionist tendencies? Are you kind of a perfectionist?
I do sometimes, yeah.
I was just
No,
because
it's not so good. I shouldn't
well,
have be too perfect. I shouldn't try to be too perfect. But it depends on the area, I would say.
mhm,
There are some aspects that I do um well, I do care a lot about, so I think they should be as good as they should be. For
mhm,
example, I don't know, the thumbnails, the photos I take. The video should be good, the composition, little details, like the audio should be nice and it shouldn't make your ears
yeah,
bleed. So those are key aspects that I spend a lot of time in and effort and
mhm,
planning. So I make so I'm very sure they're gonna turn out with a high quality.
mhm,
But then there are other aspects that I let myself be a bit more loose on. For
mhm,
example, um, when it comes to the actual interview, or well, I do interviews, but I like to call them more like conversations
right,
because I like to be part of the conversation, not only ask questions. I like to share information, not only because it makes the whole conversation more interesting, but because it also opens up the other person as well, because they feel like they're getting some input as well, not only giving,
mhm,
but also taking from me. So there, I tend to be more relaxed. I just go with the flow, and I don't have like I mean you have been on my show already, and we have some bullet points which help both of us to keep a bit more focused and know what's about.
mhm.
But in the interview, I don't mind to derail and go where it's interesting in that moment.
Yeah, no, and dude, thank you for that opportunity for that conversation because man, that was so much fun. I just felt so good afterwards. It was cool being able to connect with someone, not only to say whatever I want to say, but just to connect with you through that conversation. It wasn't like you were just someone that was interviewing me. Like we got to talk, we got to know each other a little bit, and that was pretty cool. So, no, thank you for that. That was a lot of fun. Um, Now let's go back to why you chose to get a degree in art, something artistic. Like, when did you know that you wanted to be a photographer, if you did? Um, and was there hesitation thinking like, am I going to be able to make money? Am I going to be able to make this into a career? How did your parents feel about it? So when did you kind of start that path towards something creative?
Yeah, I do appreciate that question because it do be one of those. Well, definitely it was for me. Like one of the hardest decisions I had to make probably in my life. And because I didn't drop out of high school and went, oh, I want to do photography. I mean, it can be like that, but it wasn't my case. I went to uni and studied actually physics for 2 years.
Wow.
And in Granada, which is in the south of Spain, where I grew up. And I did my second year. I did abroad. I did Erasmus, which is a European program to study abroad, and I spent that second year in Berlin studying there physics, but in a different university. And that decision to make that move was so crucial because in that year, my interest for physics exponentially declined, and my interest for photography did just the opposite, right? And it happened naturally. It wasn't like a conscious decision where I went, oh, oh my god, physics might not, and it doesn't tickle me just as much as before, and I need something else. It wasn't like that. It was more like someday, for no reason, I took my phone and I just snapped some pictures of whatever, I don't know, it was a flower or some cityscape, right? And for some reason that moment just tackled me really hard, and I don't know, it just gave me like a rush, right? Like a drug rush. I don't know. And from that point on, that was quite early in that year. And from then I just kept going with it, not really worrying too much, just doing it on the side. And then every day, I had to leave my place, go to uni, go to somewhere else. And on the way, I always looked and, oh, look, that looks interesting. And I kept taking pictures, taking photos of all these places that, spoke to me. And at some point I realized, well, this is getting out of hand. Like, I was just going outside, just looking everywhere. It's like, oh, this looks interesting, and this is looking interesting. Just focusing on the light and what looks cool, and I don't know, just having fun, yes. And well, pretty much, but I ended up doing it wasn't a whole year, but doing like project 256, 50. How many days have a year? 200.
365.
I always guess that mess up. So I did one of those. Like, it's a typical project you do as a photographer, which is taking or publishing one picture per day for each. And I did that for almost a year, and that kind of got me into photography, and getting really interested and excited about it. And well, at the end of that year, I just had to ask myself, okay, does this make sense? Is this serious? Do I want to pursue photography now for some reason? And pretty much the important question I ask myself to find that out is, well, what do I want to spend the rest of my life doing? What do I want to work at once I finish the degree?
And that's something I tell people, is like, don't get stuck doing a job that you're not happy with. I saw my dad do that, and how miserable he was coming home every day from work, a job he didn't like, and it was not a good thing. So I've always, been big on that. So for you, you were saying how that was an important part of your decision. Do you have any regrets? Do you think you made the right decision? Go talk a little bit about that, please.
Sure. Well, so yeah, I think really the hardest part was making that decision. And well, first step was, accepting that that's the path I want to take. I was pretty much changing completely the direction of where I was headed to, from, sciences to arts. And once I realized that for myself, it was actually quite easy to accept that. And but there were also all the criteria that made it tough, which is, actually telling your parents and them being okay with it. And I don't know, just informing your whole social life about that, and them being cool with it. I mean, they don't have to, but it's better if they are, right? Makes you feel better for sure. And well, eventually I did the decision. I was lucky enough that my parents supported me in my decision eventually. And up until today, I 100% do not regret that decision. So I'm very, very happy I did it, and I'm thankful for every day since then that I am working towards a better way, or a way that suits me better.
Yeah.
So I can see where people might think that there might be some degree of regret. And at some point there was, as I wasn't sure if that's going to work out, if I was going to find a job within the industry or, make a living out of it. And yeah, there are some points where like the struggle is there and it's real. But I don't know. For me, it was like if I don't give up, I eventually will manage. That was my belief that I hold on, and it ended up being like that. So I do not regret it.
That's awesome, because I think it can be incredibly scary because, if you got a traditional job, if you got a degree in a traditional thing and had a regular job, 9 to 5, you're not really relying on yourself so much. It's still you having to go to do the work or whatever. But
Yeah.
being an artist, like, it's up to you to do the work, to be successful, to do the marketing and everything else. So, yeah, it definitely, I think it takes a strong person to make that decision.
Yeah, but it makes you strong as well. Like, I don't know. I feel like, yeah, but I know what you mean. I know what you mean. Like, you gotta quite believe in yourself to make that move.
Now, what do you have any other forms of creativity, or is photography where you mainly express yourself, express the artistic side of yourself?
Well, okay, so maybe we can start with the word creativity itself and what that actually stands for.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and well, with my podcast itself, I kind of started, or I made my whole project around that word or around that idea. And frankly, I still don't really know what it is. I think it feels to me like it has its own meaning for everyone in particular. So there's no one definition of it. And I tend to see it as a very wide um, way of understanding that word, in the sense of I see creativity pretty much in everything we do that allows us to grow.
Mm-hmm.
It can be, obviously, like everyone, when you talk about creativity, thinks about art, about painting, and photography, and whatever, is a very classical way of seeing that, which I completely would put into that group as well. But I go way beyond that, and I see creativity also in problem solving, in working on yourself, on your own personality, on learning new skills. All of that is, are different legs of that term, right? So basically, that's one of the reasons I started the podcast, and it's basically getting the idea out there and maybe like sharing that with other people. Like, I have on my show people from all over the place. I have photographers on my show, but I also have bankers on my show, or people in finance, or people that do meditation or yoga. So it's a very broad way of saying it.
Mm-hmm. Like that. Now, what have you gained from having these different people on your podcast? Like, have you gained any knowledge from them? Like, what are some of the big things that you've gotten from interviewing these different people?
Well, that's a good question. um, in a way, it's like I say, okay, I know creativity is so much, but I have not reached. I still don't see all of those spots, right?
Mhm.
That other people might represent. So what I do appreciate or do have learned is all these different ways of understanding creativity, even though they might not call it like that, right?
Mhm.
They might not call it creativity when they do their daily job and do their best at it. but it kind of adds more significance to this term to me. For example, I had last week I had a guest on my show, and she like Cornelia Tillen, and she's an assistant, and she deals a lot with organization skills, and um, it goes around those kind of blocks. And she saw creativity in a way of, like, I asked her, what does creativity mean to her? And for her, it was staying out of being too repetitive, or getting out of a very reoccurring pattern in your life. Like if you do something every single day and you don't have a lot of variety on your daily plan, on your weekly plan, for her, creativity is getting out of there and doing something new every so often, which for her is a trigger to be happy and to stay excited. So that was something I did not see in that way, right? So that gave me a new perspective. With you, for example, when I had the chance to talk with you on my show, it was a way of expressing yourself through writing, right? Or on top, you did so much research on things that you feared or mattered so much to you. So that's another way of perceiving that. So what I've learned the most throughout my different episodes with all my guests that are on my show is mainly that it's seeing how everyone goes through life on their very particular way, and finds joy and growth in their own style.
That's awesome. And another thing related to that, I was wondering. You talked earlier about obstacles. When you were talking with me, we were talking about some of the obstacles I had. What do you think are do you hear anything's over and over with people, like something that's stopping them from being creative, something that they had to overcome in order to express themselves? Like, I think, self-doubt is something that comes to mind.
Yeah.
I didn't know if there's something that you hear pretty often.
Yeah, I mean, it like, I kind of think about that now as well, which is self-doubt. Maybe I can reformulate it as fear in a very like in a very broad term, which includes all that. And it's fear out of insecurity and out of lack of knowledge. So oftentimes we don't know what we want to do. So that's kind of the first step. And it took me years to find something. Let's call it the podcast I'm doing. It took me so long to find that something I can be passionate about, something I can really feel proud and happy doing, but still something that still makes sense and it's sensible and works with my way of doing things and thinking. And I've tried many different things, like a YouTube channel for tutorials or stuff like that. I've tried different things that all ended up not working out because, I don't know, they didn't feel right. So I feel like most people already struggle or fail there in a way of finding something they really want to do or really works with them, right? And once you actually find that, I feel like the hill is so much easier to overcome. Like once you actually find that, you will somehow manage to accomplish that. That's kind of what I feel like is often the problem. I don't know, yeah, but on top of that, it always adds up when you don't know how to do something specific, and that makes you scared about it, right? You don't want to make dumb decisions or bad decisions that have a bad impact in your life.
Yeah, no, I think you nailed it too. I think fear is a great term for what holds so many of us back. Whether it's making a change in your daily routine or if it's trying a new career or whatever it is. I think fear is a big one, especially fear of the unknown, fear of failure, fear of whatever.
Yeah,
I think that's
also fear
big.
of what people might think of you if you do it, if it's
Yeah.
something that is to be publicly displayed, right?
Have you had a hard time? Because this is something I think to be an artist, you have to have very thick skin. Because there's going to be people that hate your work, there's going to be people that love your work.
Yeah.
Have you had a difficult time with that? Because I always tell myself, well, how someone takes my work doesn't change my self value, self worth, but it is still upsetting when you get someone that doesn't like your stuff. So how do you deal with that? Have you kind of just, yeah, how do you deal with that?
Mm. That's another that's another very good question. I have thought about this, and I must say I've been lucky enough to have been exposed to very, very little to no um, like hate
Neg-
in that
Mhm.
sense, or just people that dislike my work. Even though I've been, everything I've been doing, I've been showing it on, Instagram and YouTube. I haven't had the chance to actually, get that bad feeling about like, oh, why they hate me so much. Mm, I think that's something, if I happen to come across with it, will struggle with at some
Mhm.
point if it's a lot. Um, but eventually, like no one, like uh, how do I say this in English? Um, no one grows up with a thick skin. Like you always need to
Right.
get it, right. So eventually, you will deal with it how it's the most beneficial to you. Like I always say, or I always have thought that like negative feedback is still important. Like you shouldn't ignore it
Mhm.
completely. Like it's still people that watch your content or see what you do,
True.
right? They're still there and have looked at it and have thought about it.
Mhm.
So it's finding a healthy balance between actually acknowledging it, but at the same time not taking it too serious.
Mhm. That's awesome. I think that's a great approach. Now, with your photography, do you have, is there anything specific that you're passionate about? Like, do you have any projects in mind that you want to do? I'm working with a good friend out here in Rhode Island who's doing father photos. So it's all of, fathers and their sons and their dads, and it's amazing. It's going to be beautiful. We're going to put out a publish the coffee table book next year.
Nice.
I was glad to be part of it. And I was just talking with him. So that's one of his passions. And he also likes to do sensual work, but then he also has a thing he loves doing faces. So those are like his three things. Like what are you passionate about? Do you think you know yet what you really like to photograph? Do you have any big plans? Like what do you want to do with photography?
Mm. So um so I know that I'm very passionate about portraiture. It's basically mainly what I do and what I have done um in all kind of forms. Like I've done studio portraiture, I've done outside, with daylight. I've done festivals, music festivals. I've pubs and clubs, and all these different forms. I've done weddings as well. Mm. And I've tried out, architectural and still life and whatnot. But eventually, I quickly realized that I'm quite into portraiture, and I really enjoy it, and I feel like I'm sort of good at it as well. During my degree time, student time, and now, sadly enough, well, in a way, I've put or combined with my podcast everything I love, pretty much, because I still do portraits when they are here in person of my guests, and use them as thumbnails. For example, that's one way I use my portrait skills. The thing is, within the field of photography itself, as a pure art, currently I'm not having any project going on right now, as I'm investing so much time and effort into the podcast and on my full-time job. So there isn't too much time left for much more, to be honest. So currently my main focus is the podcast, as it combines, photography, it combines audio treatment, it combines video and social media and marketing, all those different key aspects. So yeah, I don't know, it might change in the future. I might, start doing some side projects in whatever field of photography, of portraiture I might want to get into. But currently, I'm quite focused on the podcast, to be honest.
That's awesome. One thing that was super cool about meeting you, we happen to be talking about my Try Not to Die series. You mentioned your brother was an author,
Yeah.
And just kind of starting out, whatever. But I was looking for someone from Germany who could be an author I could write with, and we just had an amazing talk this past weekend. I loved his ideas. I think it's going to be incredible. So that book's going to happen. So thanks to you, I'll be co-authoring a book with your brother. So.
Wow, that's so good to hear. Like, I told him right away, like, hey, there's this guy from the US.
Yeah, it seems a little unreal how quickly it can happen and everything else, but it's because like he's passionate about it. Talking with him, I could feel his passion, how much he already thought about it. It's going to be a really good book, going to be a really good idea. It's going to hit well with the German market, and then I think anyone that's in the US is going to enjoy it too. So that's cool. That was so. Thank you for hooking us up.
Not worth mentioning for sure.
Very
appreciate
cool.
You actually.
Awesome, man. No, I think it's awesome. And anytime I can help someone else bring something out, like that's cool. That's fun for me, and being able to jump into someone else's mind, go into his brain, because I couldn't write the book. There's no way I could write the book that he's going to write. I know nothing about Germany. I know nothing about these creatures. And just tapping into the way that he thinks. So it's fun. It's fun having a chance to dive into someone else's mind, kind of.
That's so much fun, right? I don't know, like having a peek at the way someone else thinks. That's something I'm really interested in as well.
And you know what? I think that's one of the things that would draw me to photography too, because you get to see people in a different light. And I mean, if they're just sitting there, maybe that's different. But taking pictures of people that are just living their life, or very candid photos, I think that's pretty amazing. Because it's like a little peek into their life, into their personality, and just exploring other people. I think that's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to photography, oftentimes I tend to ask people, like, are you producing this for yourself, for the model, or for a third person that actually sees the image or the print? Because the approach is very different depending on who that's for. Right.
That's true. Do you have a hard time getting people to relax? Let's say someone wanted to be them, just show who they really are. Do you find, does it take some work on your end to make someone comfortable, to make someone, be able to be themselves?
So far, I had a few interviews with people I haven't met personally, like with you, for example, because most guests on my show so far have
Goodbye.
been, has been people I've met personally or friends of mine. So I kind of had already a sort of a connection with them.
Mhm.
So still, with most people, even though I have not talked with them in person or through the screen before, I generally don't have quite a hard time connecting,
Mhm.
or get like a healthy conversation going on. But I feel like that's maybe just me.
Yeah.
I tend to have a very, relaxed way of talking with people. I'm not too shy,
Mhm.
and that's a skill I've developed over time through public speaking and getting a lot out of my comfort zone. Um, but still, like it's a skill I'm still developing, and that's something that the podcast provides me a lot with, which is experience and ease when it comes to speaking with
Mhm.
new people. And I really like that. I love that. I love communication, and it's quite a very difficult skill to develop. I feel like
Mhm.
it has taken me forever to get decent at it. Um, but there's so many great videos and like on YouTube, to not go too far, where they explain you so much and give you so many great tips on how to have a nice and cool conversation, or how to direct the interview, what you can focus
Mhm.
on, how to ask questions, what to do when this and this happens. I don't know. There's so much you can just learn by watching and browsing. I don't know. It's something you can practice a lot, and eventually it kind of gets second nature to you.
That's awesome. I'm glad you phrased it like that, because I think a lot of people, including myself, may not see it as a skill that you need to work on to develop if you want to be that way. I think a lot of people will say, "Oh, I'm not that way. I wasn't born that way. I'm not that
Okay,
way.
yeah,
I can't do that. I'm just shy. I'm an introvert." We have excuses, but it's like, no,
yeah,
if you do want to get good at it, something, you can get good at it. And yeah, acquiring a skill, I think that's an awesome way to think about it, and that's true. That is what it is. So that's very
definitely.
cool.
Like if you say like, "Oh, I'm not like that," as you said, it's already an excuse. Obviously, everyone has the different degrees of um difficulty on learning
Mhm.
that, right? We all have tendencies to be quicker on it or not. But I once heard this like a quote. Sadly, I don't remember from who it was, but it was like communication might be the single most important skill to develop in life.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. To be able to talk to another person, that's huge. Whether it's your wife, a friend, a boss, anybody.
Exactly.
So someone across the world in Germany. That's awesome. Uh,
Totally,
no,
totally.
very cool, man. So one of the things I'm hoping, I'm keeping my fingers crossed that in October I will be able to be out there, Frankfurt. I don't know how the pandemic's going to be and all that, but if everything goes smoothly, I'll be out there, be able to enjoy the country a little bit, and hopefully we'll be able to meet up. So yeah, man, I think that'll be cool. And by then, the book with your brother will be right along the way, and so it's going to be good stuff come out of this. Now, for people that want to check out, do you have a separate website for your photography? And also, where can people check out the podcast?
Mhm. So the podcast is called the Creativ Cast, creative without an E in the end. And you can check out both things, like the podcast and my photography work, on my websites called Lucas Hohmann
Okay.
Photography.com. So it's basically just name, surname, photography. And there's a section within it with the podcast itself as well. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. You can check them out, on Spotify and iTunes and Google Podcast.
Awesome. And are you most active on Instagram? Is that where
Yeah,
a good place
pretty
to follow
much.
you? Okay.
Yeah. So
And
just find me on Lucas Hohmann, and pretty much will pop up.
awesome, man. Well, dude, I appreciate you doing this. We went through a lot to record this, and I appreciate that. We've had internet connections and then the time difference and everything else, but we got it done. That's awesome. Super excited about it. So thanks again for being on, man. I appreciate it, and yeah, we'll talk soon.
Dude, thank you so much. And yes, it has been quite the struggle, but look, we set an example on how if you really want it, that you can achieve it, even though we have all these different problems that makes it harder, but we managed.
Yeah. Yeah, the old me would have been, I would have given up. I would have said, "Oh, it's not going to work." I wouldn't even have risked it because I would have thought, "Well, the time difference and it's not going to work," and so I never even would have gone out there. So I appreciate this. Thanks again, man. I hope you have an incredible day, and then hopefully I will see you in October.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. See you soon.
"26 pills, January 21st, 2059. Stephen was half asleep as he carried his baby boy into the kitchen, his slippers dragging over the tile. He pulled his child against his robe and shushed him. "Come on, buddy," Stephen whispered. "Not now, dude. It's too early." Maddie whimpered, but got quiet when Stephen took the bottle from the fridge. "Here you go, little man." Stephen headed into the living room. The soft, electronic chirp of a cricket came from the black screen. He eased into the recliner and said, "Beach." The screen flashed to a sunny day, gentle waves lapping at the shore, deep blue skies above. Maddie snuggled into Stephen's chest, closed his eyes as he sucked on the bottle. This was their time. The few moments before work with his boy. Stephen worked 7 days a week to pay the mortgage on the house, but he needed to work 8 to hold on to it, especially now that he'd been stuck with his dad's legal fees. The man had been dead over a year, but the bills kept coming in. Stephen eased his head back and closed his eyes. The lull of the ocean and Maddie's soft breaths let Stephen drift into the memory of when Laura lay and his moved into the house. They drank wine on the floor and slept under a pile of winter coats. Lorelei said this would be the place they'd one day lie. Tap! Stephen snapped awake. The baby bottle plopped onto his lap. He turned to the window expecting he'd see the controllers. It was a bird, a kind he hadn't seen since he was a child. Nothing but crows dared the skies of San Angeles. Maddie yawned, his eyes blinking to focus. Stephen set the empty bottle on the carpet and eased his son towards the window. "Look, Maddie, it's a blue jay." The jay picked up a nut from the ledge and cracked it on its beak. Stephen checked for Maddie's reaction, but the boy was back asleep. The bird hopped off the ledge and flew towards the dying tree out front. The clock said he still had 40 minutes before he had to leave for work. He thought of going back to sleep, but decided to show Maddie the bird, that their neighborhood wasn't all death and gloom. Stephen set Maddie in the bassinet, listened to the house for a few seconds. Nothing but the lapping waves. He headed into the kitchen, reached on top the fridge and brought down a small pill bottle, shook out the contents. Only 4 Curlmine pills left. There had been 30 when he bought them 5 days ago. The pills were free to every blocker. They increased productivity. Lorelei refused to have them in her house, said they caused too much stress and anxiety. The tab dissolved on his tongue, the effect immediate, everything clearer in a rush. Not crystal, but so much better than the fog Stephen stumbled around in. He stepped over to the laundry and took off his robe, changed into the black shirt and pants, scuffed-up leather shoes. The pill bottle went into a suit jacket he left hanging by the door. Stephen swigged some stale coffee, grabbed a tiny filtration mask, kissed Maddie's forehead, slid the mask over his fine red hair. Maddie smiled through the plastic visor and opened his deep blue eyes. The left was a little lazy, just like Stephen's father's, the man responsible for Maddie even being here. Stephen started to stand but was jerked back down, Maddie's hand clutching his tie. "You're getting strong, buddy." He peeled off Maddie's chubby fingers and gave him another kiss. Stephen wrapped the brown blanket under Maddie and said, "Come on, I got a surprise for you." The moment Stephen stepped outside, he felt like a new man. He ignored the yard of dirt and dead leaves, once a garden before the block was erected and cut off all but a sliver of sun. The block's glimmering black wall was all there was to the east. It drew everyone in and never let them leave. We're all moths. Stephen reminded himself he'd come here to show Maddie something delicate and good. He walked Maddie into the yard, noticed the tree was empty. He checked the cables for the jay, ignoring their buzzing of foot-long saucers peppering the sky. The bird wasn't up there either. There were no bushes to hide in for miles. Stephen, still looking up, kicked something, fell forward. He caught his balance. Maddie squirmed out of the blanket. "Oh, God," Stephen said. He tripped over the bird, lying flat, its left side a diseased mass. Stephen nudged it toward the trash incinerator. He'd throw it in later with gloves. Right now, Maddie deserved a walk. The neighborhood was relatively safe, especially this early. Stephen took the usual path, the one Lorelei used to walk to work, back when she'd leave the house. Maddie kept his eyes on his father, uninterested in the decaying trees. Stephen searched for words of wisdom, something about appreciating everything around you. He tried to remember all the things his dad had told him. The man had risked everything to help them and died because of it. The burned-out remains of the clinic were at the end of the street. The controllers had torched the place after Stephen's father had been charged with sterilization tampering. Stephen had spent so much of his life in that building. It's where he met Lorelei 10 years ago, the cute little tech who would smile but hardly talk. His dad had trusted her with everything, loved her as his own. That's why he'd performed the surgery. She desperately wanted a child. Maddie was the final gift Stephen's father would ever give. 6 days after he was born, the clinic was raided and everyone arrested. Lorelei's name popped up in the files. The controllers scanned her, knew she'd been sterilized and had been reversed. They gave Lorelei 10 seconds to make a choice, testify, or have Maddie taken away. Lorelei told them everything. Stephen's father was executed the following week. "Stephen Cooper," a deep voice boomed. "Return to the sidewalk." It came from a metal speaker in the light post. Maddie burst into tears and Stephen leapt back onto the sidewalk. He didn't even realize he'd wandered off the curb. The pills usually kept him completely focused. He wanted to shout that there weren't any vehicles out, that it was safe, but it'd only make things worse. The speaker on the light post said, "Jaywalking violation. Automatic withdrawal of $452. "Of course," Stephen muttered. He calmed Maddie down and crossed at the corner, tried to stay upbeat. He hummed a song his father used to sing to him. They turned back onto their street. A woman paced their yard. Lorelei, her eyes popped and she sprinted at them, her robe flapping behind her. Lorelei pointed at their house. "Get inside!" Maddie cried. "Lower your voice," Stephen said. She leapt for Maddie, her fingernails digging into Stephen's forearm. "Now!" Stephen shielded Maddie with his back. "What is wrong with you? I could have dropped him. Why the hell are you out there? You promised." There was always someone listening, even outdoors. Stephen yelled, "We were on a walk. Where do you think I'm going?" Lorelei forced him towards the porch. "We said no going outside. We agreed. It's not going to kill him." She took Maddie. "It's okay, baby." Stephen said, "You need to calm down. You're scaring him." Lorelei took a deep breath and blew it out. "You promised you would never do this." "He's my son, Lorelei." "Then act like it. Protect him." "You need to stop getting so hysterical and paranoid." Stephen's hand was shaking. He felt sweat beads on his neck, even though it was chilly. Lorelei stomped her foot. "I'm not paranoid. This is our child. Look at you," Lorelei said. "You're jittering. You're on those goddamn pills, aren't you?" Stephen clenched his fist. "Of course I'm not. Don't turn this on me." Lorelei shook her head in disgust. Entered the house. Stephen started to follow, but she slammed the door in his face. Stephen grabbed the knob, almost threw open the door, but stopped. He could hit the baby. He backed off the porch, his heart thumping so hard he felt it in his head. Still had another 20 minutes before he had to leave for work. He closed his eyes, breathed. Lorelei would be upstairs in a few minutes, and he'd be able to get his stuff and go. The diseased bird was still by the incinerator. He walked over to the garage, scanned his palm, and it opened. He grabbed a pair of work gloves and a lead mesh bag. The gloves were snuggier than usual. Stephen walked back to the incinerator and squatted down next to the bird, its healthy side up. When he was a boy, he used to see blue jays like this all the time behind the clinic, back before the skies turned to ash. The news said it was due to meteor shower colliding with the moon. Particles drifted into our atmosphere. That's what the newscaster says. But everyone knew it was the factories outside Zone 45. Black gunk poured out of the stacks night and day for over a year until they built the iron walls to hide the truth. Forced everyone to move down into the valley so they couldn't see what was being pumped into the sky. A distant boom reverberated throughout the streets. A rumble shook the ground. Stephen nearly fell onto the bird. He turned and saw flickering orange lights coming from the block. He shielded his eyes, squinted, saw the black solar panels he had blown out about halfway up the massive wall. Fires inside. Sirens blared, and Stephen covered his ears, the rough fabric of the gloves dragging across his skin. "Residents, return to your homes immediately," the speaker on the light post announced. "This is not a drill. All residents return to your homes immediately." Stephen stood and saw something racing out of the block. A motorcycle kicking up dust. It drew closer. Sparks flashed around the bike. A controller on top of the block was shooting. Stephen found himself walking toward the bike, barreling over the hill and down his street. A bullet pierced the black tire. The rider launched over the handlebars and slid across the pavement, the mangled bike following, finally crashing into a parked car. The rider tried to roll over but fell back. Stephen ran into the street. The speaker on the light post said his name. "Jaywalking violation. Automatic withdrawal of $452. Stephen knelt by the rider, saw his own reflection in the mirrored visor. Just lie still. But the rider wasn't staying put. "They're coming," a young woman said. "Just relax. They're going to kill us all." "Okay, just lie back. You could be bleeding inside." Stephen looked around. Didn't see any blood on the street or around her body. "Resident Stephen Cooper, step away from the fugitive," the speaker commanded. "Please help me," the young woman said. "It's okay. You're going to be okay." "This is your second warning," the speaker said. "Step away from the fugitive." Stephen looked back towards the block, saw 3 controller vehicles zooming out of the gates. "Take me inside," the young woman said. "You can leave me here." The controllers were closing in. Stephen scooped her up and carried her into his yard. "Resident Stephen Cooper, you are in direct violation of security command." "It'll be all right. It'll be all right," Stephen repeated. Lorelei threw open the door. "What are you doing? What the hell is this? Get out of the way." Stephen pushed past Lorelei and set the young woman onto the couch. Residents, a known fugitive is being harbored in home 1312. Stephen, get her out of here now. The rider pulled off her helmet. She couldn't have been a day over 16. Thank you. What happened to you? Why are you running? Stephen asked. Who cares? Get her out of here, Lorelei said. We were just protesting the new ordinance when the controllers opened fire. They shot Timmy in the head. They just shot him. We weren't even doing anything. We just had some signs. We were singing a song and they just killed him. This is your final warning, the speaker said. Stephen swiped hair from the teenager's eyes. What's your name? Kate. Her jaw clenched as she shook her head back and forth through the tears. I'm so sorry I couldn't help him. There's nothing to be sorry for. Everything's going to be okay. Sirens grew louder. The controllers had arrived. Maddie cried from upstairs. Lorelei must have put him in his crib. Oh, God, they're coming, Kate said. Yes, and you have to go. Lorelei gripped Kate's arm, yanked her. Something popped in Kate's shoulder. She screamed. God damn it, let her go, Stephen said. I'm sorry, Lorelei said. She stumbled back towards the front door. Residents, you have 10 seconds to send out the fugitive, or we will use force, a controller said through a megaphone. Tell them exactly what happened, Stephen said. You can't send me out there. You can't, Kate said. No one's going anywhere, he said. Just tell me what happened. We were just singing and people started gathering around. A family joined us. Lorelei threw open the front door, her arms raised. This isn't what you think. She forced her way in. Please help us. Get down on the ground, a controller yelled. They're going to kill me, aren't they? Kate said. She was trembling. Her eyes locked on the window. A buzzing grew louder. A steel saucer hovered near the dead tree. 2 metal flaps opened underneath the saucer. A tiny missile. Lorelei, get away from the door, Stephen yelled. Oh, God, no, Kate cried. Stephen stood, ran for his wife who was refusing to get down. Just take her, Lorelei screamed. Stephen was only 3 feet away when he heard the whoosh of a missile cutting through the air. A blinding light filled the room as it rocketed inside their home. Lorelei's head splattered into 1,000 flecks. The ringing in his ears forced him to his knees. He looked down, saw the severed white bone of what used to be his left arm. He tried to turn back to Kate, but stopped at the window. Another missile, another whoosh, a flash. Then, nothing at all.
This has been a presentation of the Project Entertainment Network.